Hello again, it's Monika, and I'm back with Ned and Kelly Vandiver, who are relationship coaches who work alongside me in the Couples Cure. And we're here today to discuss the topic of misguided expectations. This is something that we see all the time. This happens without people even realizing it, that there's something about the work in relationships, like relationship transformation specifically, where people will do very little and expect it to yield really big, profound, and instant results. And so I think a big part of the challenge is really getting clear on what relationship transformation is really about. And I think it's managing expectations around what that looks like, what to expect, how long it takes, and what's actually involved.
Yeah.
So if you kind of like tried a couple tools here and there, read a couple blogs, and you've tried them once or twice and then gotten really discouraged when it didn't work, and then thought, oh my God, nothing's going to work. You get discouraged and think it's hopeless when really you've only done a couple things. This talk is for you. If you have been working on things maybe once a week, but the rest of your week you're really focusing on other things like family or health or work, and you're finding yourself frustrated and starting to believe that it's not going to work, then this talk is for you as well. And also, if you're just wondering how much you should be doing, if you're doing a little bit here and there, but you're just not sure, like, how much should I be doing, then you definitely want to tune into this talk, because we're going to break this down and offer a solution for you so that you can really have a better expectation of what's required in relationship work, and to know that it does take, you get out of it what you put into it. But I think that there's something about this field in particular where people have unrealistic expectations of what they should get out of what they're putting in.
Right. Yeah.
Don't you guys find that this is true in your work with clients, that people
Definitely.
feel like they try a couple things and a week goes by and it's not much better, and then they just think it's not going to work and they want to throw in the towel really quickly.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I have this saying, this phrase that I always remind myself of when there's anything in my life that I'm wanting to see these great results in. But I know deep down that I really haven't done everything that is required of me in order to see those really high bar, high level expectations I have for myself. And it's basically like, Kelly, don't be upset about the results you don't get from the work that you don't do.
Yeah.
And so if what you want is excellence in your marriage relationship, you must step up and do what excellence requires of you to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what that means is, I think for some people, like, for example, if people are going to go to the gym and they want to get a six-pack and they don't have one yet, and they know, okay, I have to eat these different foods and I have to eliminate these other foods, and then I need to do certain exercises, they don't think that if they do that once a week for an hour that they're going to get that result.
Right.
They know that they would have to go like every day or 4 times a week or 5 times a week. And then on a daily basis, they're making nutritional choices. They're, with everything that they eat, they're thinking about that. And they're not thinking, well, on Tuesday, I'll focus on my health for an hour and then I'm going to get that result. But for some reason, we think that with relationships, we should be able to do that. So I try to make that analogy and say, if it's not something that you're doing every day or several times a week, and if it's not something you're thinking about at least every day, and getting really mindful and present about what your intentions are with your relationship, with every time you're communicating, every time you're talking to your spouse, every time that you're trying to problem solve in your marriage, whether it's co-parenting or whatever it is, if you're not keeping that top of mind, you're just essentially unconsciously agreeing to do it the same way that you've always done it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kelly and I were talking about this specifically earlier, and the thing that really came to mind was, the biggest thing I see in terms of the problem, for the most part, is that because we are creatures of routine and habit, and we learn this early, at an early age, and this is the way we adapt, oftentimes we bring really bad routines and really bad patterns relationally to the relationship.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and I think this is part of
default.
where we start to talk about the awareness of how we play into many of the dysfunctions that show up in communication, in the intimacy, or just even around finance. And, you know, so I think for me, that's what I see and hear a lot around, and have the experience around when I talk to people about what the problems that they're really experiencing within the relationship is just they're unaware of how they're showing up.
Yeah.
You know, and because that's kind of part of, you know, you have to know you have a problem in order to fix the problem, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think, because what you're talking about is that like strong default mode that just takes over in our habit of communication. Yep. And if you're not actively working against your default, it will win.
Exactly.
So yep. I think when we're talking about, like when you say excellence, Kelly, and when we're talking about getting maximum result, what we're really talking about is putting in a lot of effort to work against that default. It's not something you can just try to remember. It's something you have to work actively against through action steps, through belief change work, through meditation, through practicing these tools over and over again until it becomes more comfortable, until it becomes your new default.
Totally.
And it's not going to happen just like, oh, now I've learned this tool. Now I'm just going to remember that. It's like flipping the switch. And then if that doesn't work, or if I fail at it, well then, oh, I guess this doesn't work.
Right.
I guess I just can't do it. Or I guess my spouse just isn't the right person.
Right.
Because it's very hard to learn these new things, and it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
It does.
It feels mechanical at first sometimes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
There is a real, and people don't get this until we teach them, like there is a real skill level, a high level of sophisticated skill that is required for excellence in relationship. I mean, because you have to go so many layers deep, and to stack on what you guys were both just sort of talking about. And the biggest thing I see first and foremost, I always say, you know, people have issues in their relationships because they're completely unaware of their patterns. They're unaware of their psyche. They're unaware of their disorders and their dysfunction that they've been prone to since they were little kids. And they dealt with trauma or they dealt with neglect. And the way that you responded and reacted as a child, it carries with you into your adulthood. So whether you're withdrawing and going and hiding under your bed when you were little, or went and laid in your bed, or hid in your room, or you were one that threw a fit, or you were one that went off into fantastical places.
Yeah.
To really get a hold of how am I showing up as an adult, right? And until you really get to that place, which takes having help to figure out how to get to that place even in the first place. If you're completely unaware of all those dysfunctional parts of yourself, and I think to a certain extent, we all at one point or another, and most people walking around as functional adults these days, in their own default modes, I think that we all on some deep level know that we have some issues. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's a part of ourselves for a lot of people. I know for myself included for a long time, it's a part of yourself you don't like. It's that part of yourself you disown. It's that part of yourself you just want to go away. That's not how it works. You have to, right? Like you were just talking about, Monika, you have to be working constantly all the time, minute to minute, day to day, hour to hour, working against, not against, but working to create new
override.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great word.
Just strengthening. It's that second language. It's like learning a second language and learning a new way of relating. You have to practice it and strengthen it really proactively and systematically and at a high level of frequency in the beginning, so that you can override the default. And then that becomes the stronger, and then you create a new default. So it's not like it's that hard for the rest of your life. It's just really a lot in the beginning. And I think that people get it wrong and think, they freak out because they think, oh my God, is it going to be this hard forever and ever? And but in the beginning, it can be really hard because even if, like, first of all, there's the self-awareness piece that you mentioned. If you're not aware of it, then you have to go through the layers to get there. But
Yeah.
even people who've already done that work and they have a high level of insight and they recognize how their history impacts their relationship skills or lack thereof,
Yeah.
and they know what tools they should be using, they still might have a hard time doing it.
Yep.
Because when the triggers go in, activate and you go into fight or flight, it's really hard to access that information. So then that's where you have to really engage in the daily spiritual practice. That's when you have to do the daily belief change work to really create the new neural networks that will help you support you doing it more consciously, automatically, and not have it be this like elusive thing.
Right.
Through practice, let's say you do it right. Let's say there's something you're working on and you get it right 1 out of 10 times in the beginning. And then slowly it's 5 out of 10 times. Pretty soon it's 9 out of 10 times.
Right.
In practice, it becomes the frequency of you being able to do it the right way goes up and up.
Yep.
The duration of the time that you're living in that good conscious place extends and becomes longer. And then the intensity of the times where you slip back and fail becomes less and less.
Right.
So it's just surrendering to recognizing it's not going to be just a little bit of effort. If I really wanted to override this whole, especially if you've been married for 20 years and you have these deeply entrenched patterns,
Yep.
there's no way to create a new story without a high level of traction.
Yeah. And not only that, you have to couple that with your spouse or partner who may not be doing the work.
Right.
Yes, right. That's hard too. That's another barrier, but you can
makes
still
it that much more difficult. Yeah. So you
we
can't.
do it all the time, though, don't we? When one person makes those changes, even though they're really getting discouraged, like, well, I don't know what they're doing, but I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and then eventually that person comes around, and it feels
Exactly.
a little
Yeah.
But it works and it pays off. So you guys have to be willing to do what it takes. You have to be willing to pay the price of getting what you want. And if that means you have to do more, then just embrace it. If that means you have to do your journal every day, if that means you have to do belief change work every day, if that means you have to practice things that take time out of your week that you feel like you don't have time, are you willing to do that? Are you willing to find the time? That's what you have to do. Like, there is no way around it. There's no shortcut.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the other thing
if that means you have to go into debt, like we're taught to do for our cars, our houses, our careers, our education, if that means you have to go into debt,
vacation, bachelor's degrees,
all of it.
Yeah.
What is the most important thing to you? If you value your marriage, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go into debt for it. But it's really like Ned always says when we're talking to people, it's like, this isn't you going into debt. This is you investing in the most precious thing to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like your time, your energy, your money. It's so important.
Yeah, the ROI on investing in your relationship and your marriage and yourself shows up in all aspects and facets of your life. So the return is so much greater when you invest in that part of your yourself and your relationship. It shows up hugely.
Absolutely. And then when people do invest, then they still need to invest the time.
Exactly.
When I see that, I see, people who have already invested in their transformation and in their marriage and the health of their marriage and their personal legacy is really what they've invested in. But then they still might have a hard time actually doing the work that's required, on a day-to-day basis as well. So like, you still have to put the time in. It really is nothing different than any other area in your life where you want to say, I'm here and I want to be here.
Yeah.
If I'm going to get from A to Z, these are the things I'm going to have to do to get there.
Right.
And what the other part I want to say, though, around what you're talking about, and Kelly and I talk about this all the time, and I'm just going to make this very brief.
Sure.
But the biggest thing I see is that people don't create, like you said, with everything else in your life, there's a goal.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mission. I don't see people creating a vision and goal and mission for their marriage.
Mm-hmm. Not enough.
Yeah, you can't. And I say that because you can't hit a target. You can't hit a target you can't see.
Right, because you haven't.
If you don't set anything up for your marriage in the way of what your marriage looks like, what the two of you look like happily. And I say this because oftentimes when we're talking to people who are thinking about investing in our program, when we talk about the heaven, oftentimes they have a really hard time being clear about what that looks like.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm saying,
what is my marriage going to really look like if I could have what I want? Because
exactly.
we're stuck in what I don't like.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if I could just eliminate what I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first piece of it. But I agree with you, Ned. I think it's so important to have a vision of where you want to go, and then recognize, okay, what's it going to take to get there? Make a list. You got to make a list of the things that are wasting your time.
Right.
And be able to basically take the time that you were spending on what you're wasting your time on and invest that time into getting towards your goals in the marriage. And if that means, having a morning practice, if that means doing the homework, if that means practicing the tools, reaching out and getting the support, engaging and utilizing the mentorship that you already have.
Right.
Maybe you already have a mentorship available to you that you're not using enough. I think that that's a really common thing too, where people maybe sabotage just a little bit. So it's really just about saying it's a fast track. If you can get support and really make peace with the idea that you're going to be not doing this just once a week. If you really want to turn around your marriage, it's something that you're going to be doing systematically, almost day to day. You know what I mean? If you can get behind that and really do that, you will be able to fast track where you want to go instead of standing in the dark.
So essentially, you stepped into the solutions, of what people need to do. And like you always say, first, you need to make the commitment to do something differently.
Mm-hmm.
You always say that you have to decide to make the change and do things very differently than you have been doing them,
Right.
Because if you do the same thing, and Kelly and I were talking about this again earlier, the saying Einstein had around, expecting something different, doing the same thing, saying that's insanity. A lot of times people do the same thing with their marriage. They want different results, but they don't act differently to yield anything differently in the marriage. So it will drive you crazy. It will drive you crazy.
Yeah.
Let me read a book. Let me watch a webinar. Let me, dabble and never implement anything that I'm learning for a long period of time to see where that gets me. If you're reading a book or you're watching a webinar or you're watching this live stream right now and you're not implementing what you're learning every single day with your partner, then that's doing the minimum, expecting a maximum result.
Exactly. And I think that also speaks to the fact that it's not just about putting in your all and doing what it takes, but it's really also having the patience of knowing that sometimes it takes time. You might be doing great and there's a little bit of a delay in terms of how your spouse is responding or the dynamics haven't shifted completely.
Yeah.
And so that can be very discouraging, but it's really about recognizing it takes time. You just have to keep doing it.
Yep.
Exactly.
Don't give up, just keep doing it.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it too. Don't give up.
Yeah, and really know that not only do you have to do whatever it takes and be willing to pay the price to get what you want, but you have to be willing to do it as long as it takes as well.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go.
It's not so scary as we're making it sound. It's not that horrible, but it just tends to be more than people think. Yeah. And when people can adjust their expectations around that, I think it's so much easier because people then show up differerly. They're less likely to get tripped up in their mental state. Like they won't get discouraged. They won't have negative thinking. They're more likely to take it as a temporary setback, but keep the big picture in mind and recognize this is just part of the journey. It doesn't happen in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Even when you're doing the work perfectly.
Yes, right.
It takes a long time to really get to a place where communication feels really easy and like it flows and you're understanding one another and you're having a meeting of the minds. That takes years.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. That's a good point because people will often say to me, but I did it right and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I know. And that's so
Try again.
Just keep going because it will pay off and you just have to keep the faith. So this is really about adjusting expectations, being willing to pay the price, knowing that if you want high level results, you definitely have to put in high level action. And if this is something that you want to do, if you're looking for support, if you're looking for how to get traction in overcoming your default modes in your marriage, we invite you to book a call to talk to one of us. You can book a call at monikahoyt.com/talk. And then we can just get to know you and your situation a little bit, what your dynamics are, look at the barriers, see what we can do. If it's something we can help you with, we'll let you know. If it's something we can help you with, we can at least help you get clarity on where to go or what the next steps would be for you. But either way, you definitely want to make a decision, whether it's with us or whether it's with someone else, to take a stand and say, all right, I'm willing to put in more on a day-to-day level in order to get something different if you're unhappy in your marriage and if you're worried that it's not going to make it. Think about, reevaluate, what more can I do? Because most of the time when I talk to people, they think they've tried everything and they really haven't. So
yeah. Most of the time people think they're doing a lot and they're really not, okay? So they're really not doing much of anything, okay? But they have this story that they are, and they're not. But anyway, and also I would just want to say this before we get off of here. Guys, if this has served you, please like it and share it, or tag a friend of yours who's married, who's going through some crap in their marriage, because a lot of people think that they are alone and that they have issues in their marriage, and they are not. You are not. So like, share, and tag someone if this video served you.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Thank you. And then we'll catch you guys next time. We'll have another topic next week. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of the week and weekend. And thank you, Ned and Kelly, for joining me again today.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Monika.
See you then.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.